My neighbor reported me to the HOA for a garden gnome. A garden gnome. Then she sent me a letter. You're bringing the property value down. I laughed. Then I planted 47 gnomes. What she did next got me fired. So I knocked on her door with a document in hand. I moved to the suburbs outside Charlotte for peace and quiet. After years of city noise and apartment walls thin as paper, I wanted space. A lawn. A garage. Neighbors who waved, but didn't talk too much. I bought a house on a cul-de-sac where the biggest event was the annual HOA barbecue. It was boring, and I liked it that way. My next-door neighbor, Diane, introduced herself the first week. She wore pastel sweaters and always had that little white dog with her. Coco, I think. She smiled tight. The kind of smile that says welcome but also stay in your lane. We never had a problem, not really. We didn't talk much. I mowed my lawn, waved when I saw her. She kept to her side. Until the gnome. It started with a garden gnome. Just one. My niece gave it to me after a road trip. It was goofy. The gnome was sitting on a mushroom, holding a sign that said, "Chill Zone." I thought it was funny. I set it near my front steps, next to the bushes. It was small, barely noticeable unless you were looking. 3 days later, I got an email from the HOA. Subject line: Notice of violation. Apparently, I had violated a rule: unauthorized decorative lawn ornaments. There was even a photo attached. Someone had taken it standing on the sidewalk, zoomed in on the gnome. I replied, asking if it was serious. It was. I had 10 days to remove it, or I'd be fined $50 per day. At first, I just laughed. It was so petty. I figured someone was bored and needed to feel important. Then, I got the letter. It was hand-delivered, folded clean, sealed in a white envelope with no return address. The handwriting on the front said just my name. Inside was one sentence. Your lawn decor is negatively affecting the neighborhood aesthetic. Please consider the value of others' homes. Some of us care about keeping standards. Diane, that's when I understood. This wasn't about rules. It was about control. So, I went on Amazon and ordered 47 gnomes. I spent 2 days placing them. One on the mailbox. One sitting under the tree. 3 in a circle around the bird bath. They all had different poses. One was fishing in a fake pond I made with a blue tarp. Another was pushing a wheelbarrow, filled with tiny beer cans. One was mooning the street. It was over the top, and I knew it. That was the point. The next morning, Diane stared at my yard like I'd lit it on fire. She didn't say a word. Just walked her dog past, eyes wide. That was the last time she even looked me in the eye. At first, it was funny. Neighbors laughed. A few took pictures. One guy down the street even asked where I bought them. But then it got worse. About 2 weeks later, my manager called me into his office. Closed the door. Said he wanted to talk about something that came across his desk. He handed me a folder. Inside were screenshots. Posts from our neighborhood Facebook group. Someone had uploaded photos of my lawn, talking about how I was destabilizing the community atmosphere and openly mocking HOA policy. There was a post that read, "This man works in property management and can't follow basic property rules?" What does that say about his professionalism? The comments were brutal. One of them even tagged my company page. It didn't take long. HR said my behavior reflected poorly on the company. Said it was a conflict of interest. I tried to explain it was personal. A joke. They didn't care. I was let go. I went home, sat on the porch, and stared at my army of gnomes. That night, I packed them up. Every single one. The next day, my lawn was empty again. Diane didn't say a word. But I knew she was behind it. So I started digging. I downloaded the HOA handbook, read it cover to cover, took notes. Then I started watching her house. I noticed her lawn, those fake plastic tulips in her flower bed. They'd been there all year. That was against Rule 12b. Her hedges? Too tall. Over 5 feet. Violation of Section 9A. But the big one was this. Diane sold homemade quilts online. She posted about it all the time on Facebook Marketplace. Pickup and neighborhood name. Cash preferred. I cross-checked the HOA rulebook. Operating a business from your home without declaration? Major violation. Fine worthy. So I printed everything out. Photos. Screenshots. Highlighted every rule she broke. Then I knocked on her door. She opened it slow. Looked me up and down. I thought you might want this, I said, holding the folder out. Since you care about the rules so much. She took it. Didn't say anything. Closed the door. I walked back to my porch and waited. I didn't hear anything for 2 days. Then the HOA sent me a notice. Not about gnomes this time. It was about neighbor conflict, citing reports of harassment and targeted retaliation. The letter was full of vague language, like they were trying to scare me without actually accusing me of anything directly. I knew who filed it. I walked into the next HOA meeting. They're usually held in the rec center once a month. I hadn't been to one before. Most people don't unless they're in trouble. Diane was there, sitting near the front in one of those folding metal chairs, her hands folded neatly on her lap. When they opened the floor for public comments, I stood up. I had my binder in hand, printouts, photos, rulebook sections. I'd like to address a concern, I said. I've received multiple notices from this HOA based on complaints from a neighbor. I just want to make sure these rules apply to everyone, not just me. Some people shifted in their seats. A couple whispered. I handed the HOA board copies of the documents. I spoke clearly. Calm. I listed Diane's violations one by one. I didn't add anything extra. Just the facts. The rules she had broken. The proof. They said they'd review the matter internally. The meeting ended awkward. Diane left before I could say anything. That night, someone egged my house. It wasn't kids. It was too clean. Just 4 eggs, one on each window, like it was done with a purpose. No mess. No shells. Just a message. I didn't report it. I cleaned it off. I stayed quiet. Then the next day, my mailbox was open. Not broken. Just left wide open like someone wanted me to know they'd been there. I started keeping a camera on the front porch. One of those doorbell ones with motion alerts. Nothing for a few days. Then I caught her. 3:12 a.m. Diane. In a long coat. Walking up my driveway. She didn't touch anything, just stood there. Looked at the house. Then walked away. I saved the footage. The next HOA meeting, I didn't speak. I just handed the board a USB drive with the video. Said nothing. Walked out. That week, Diane got her own violation letter. But here's the twist, she fought back. She hired a lawyer. A real one. Sent me a cease and desist for harassment, defamation, and emotional distress. Said if I didn't stop targeting her, she'd file a lawsuit. I took the letter to a friend of mine, former cop, now private investigator. He looked into Diane. Turns out, this wasn't her first neighborhood war. She'd been forced out of her last HOA after a string of complaints and one formal mediation hearing. She moved here a year before me, probably hoping for a clean slate. I printed everything. Her history. Her old HOA complaints. I even got a signed statement from her previous neighbor through a Facebook group. I was building something. Not a case. A story. I didn't want revenge anymore. I wanted to expose her. I didn't go public right away. I waited. Meanwhile, the neighborhood started noticing something was off. A few people came up to me during their walks, cautiously, like they didn't want to get involved but couldn't help being curious. "What's going on with Diane?" one guy asked. "She told my wife you were stalking her." I just shrugged. You ever hear of someone getting stalked with a folder full of HOA violations? He laughed, but I could see he was nervous. The private investigator I hired dug deeper. Turns out Diane's husband left her 6 years ago, abruptly. No divorce record. Just a separation. He moved to Oregon. Completely cut ties. That didn't surprise me. What did surprise me was what came next. 2 houses down from me lived a couple, Sean and Crystal. Friendly, quiet. They didn't say much at first. But after word spread about my job loss and the HOA drama, they invited me over for dinner. Said they wanted to clear the air. We sat on their back deck, eating pulled pork sliders, when Crystal leaned in and said, "You're not the first." I looked up. "What?" "With Diane," she said. "She got a woman evicted 2 streets over. Same routine. Complaints to the HOA, letters, accusations. And before that, she tried to get a kid expelled for spray painting a rock in the common area." Sean chimed in. "She's obsessed with order, control. And she always gets people alone. Makes it look like they're the problem." I asked why nobody said anything. "Because she does it smart," he said. "Quiet. Legal threats. Always just enough to scare people into backing off." That night, I knew I had to change tactics. I stopped fighting her through the HOA. I started collecting stories.
Anonymous tips.
Old posts. Messages. People were eager once they realized someone else was pushing back. I created a private blog, just called it Her Other Side. I wrote everything as plain as I could, fact-based. I didn't use her full name, just a neighbor. But everyone in the neighborhood knew. I posted screenshots, letters, redacted statements. It wasn't dramatic. It was just real. Within a week, it had over 2,000 views. The HOA board called an emergency meeting. I didn't even go. I didn't have to. A few nights later, I got a knock on my door. It wasn't Diane. It was her daughter. Mid-30s, dressed like she came straight from work. She looked exhausted. "I'm sorry," she said, before I could say anything. About everything. I stepped outside. We talked on the porch. "She's not well," her daughter said. "She gets fixated. And when she thinks someone's hurting the neighborhood, it's like she needs to punish them. I've tried to stop her before." She pulled something from her purse. A handwritten apology. Diane's handwriting. "She wanted me to give this to you." I didn't take it. Instead, I asked, "Did she ever do this in your childhood?" Her eyes welled up. She nodded. "She made me report my best friend to the principal in 3rd grade. Because she thought her clothes were too mature." I didn't speak to that friend again until college. We stood there in silence. Finally, I asked, "Why now?" "Because," she said, "you were the first person who didn't back down." I still see Diane sometimes, walking her little white dog like nothing ever happened. We don't speak. We just pass each other in silence, like strangers. The truth is, I didn't win anything. I lost a job, lost trust in the neighborhood, lost the peace I came here for. But I did learn something I can't unlearn. Sometimes, the person who smiles the widest is the one who needs to control everything around them because they've completely lost control of themselves. And maybe that's the saddest part. She never said the words, but I still hear them. "You brought this on yourself."